So here's the thing about the past lives in Avatar. Getting rid of them was actually one of the smartest writing choices that Korra as a series made, despite what many people on the internet might tell you, and how unpopular this video is probably going to be. I can certainly understand the bitterness and sadness for losing the connection itself, but the symbolic importance of their loss far outweighs their usage in the actual shows, as I will prove throughout this video. And while I of course was deeply saddened by their loss as well, I also consistently feel that it is one of the best choices that Korra made, and that finding a way to restore that connection in Seven Havens would not only be destroying what Korra as a series built, and also is just kind of a retcon, but it would also be a rather poor choice for the series as a whole. Going forward, it would make many of the decisions that they have already established as universe-changing inconsequential, and that's never a smart writing choice. Ever. First of all, I'd like to cover that the past lives are a bit overrated. Listen, I do love the past lives as a concept. I'm not trashing on them. I really do. And as I've said, I don't think anybody is wrong for missing them and being upset that Unalaq took them away. I do take fault with people who blame Korra because Garlina was fucking assaulted and somehow it's her fault. Actually, that's extremely true to life. However, I do think that the role of the past lives in the series is a bit overinflated. They don't really make or break the Avatar itself, as many imply. Oftentimes, they were used more expositorily, to be able to get Aang to understand his true mission and the origins behind the feud with the Fire Nation as a whole. Roku, primarily, was mostly a directional compass for Aang, pointing him toward what he should be doing to make up for his own mistake that he was never able to correct, rather than being an actual emotional compass. In the finale, when all of these past lives, including Roku, were called upon for advice and Aang spent an entire episode listening to them all tell him to kill Ozai, he ignores them anyway. I'm not saying he was wrong to, quite the opposite actually. I really love the ending of The Last Airbender and Aang being able to retain his ideals in a world where his entire culture is gone. My point is that regardless of whether it was a smart decision or not to take Ozai's bending, Aang goes against the wishes of all of his past lives, or at least like the 5 that we talked to. He proves definitively that they don't know everything about how to solve every solution, that there is more every avatar can do to define their place in the world. The past lives were simply an aspect of the avatar's existence, not the crux of their purpose. Like I said, the past lives largely served to provide exposition toward history, or to bail Aang out when he had no way of defeating the overwhelming forces himself. Aang still made his own path forward and used every bit of information that he gleaned from his time in the physical world to color his decision-making. While the past lives held a ton of knowledge of how things were, how they succeeded, they weren't entirely relevant on how to solve the issues of today, save for their personal stake in it. Conversely, in Korra, Aang is really only relevant to the main plot concerning the villain in the first book. So even after Korra does lose her connection to him, there isn't much that he would have been around to give advice for. Roku, after all, was there for Aang in terms of his avatar duties, but often didn't really interfere or help Aang directly unless he hit a major wall in his journey, like when they needed to visit Roku's temple, or when Zhang Zhang refuses to train him. However, besides these individual specialized occasions, Roku generally remains dormant most of the time. I also find it interesting that the plot often has to write itself in a way that makes it difficult for the past lives to be accessed, except in like the very final episode. It's rather convenient oftentimes that they don't show up and provide this crucial information earlier and only do it at the exact moment that we need it revealed, and obviously really late in the series to make sure it's an actual reveal. It just feels a little bit forced to be that way. Like sometimes they'll just show up and talk to the avatar, and sometimes there's this big spiritual journey required, like Aang going to the temple on the crescent-shaped island at the solstice to talk to Roku. Why could he only talk to Roku at the solstice there, and then later on in the series he kind of just pops up whenever he feels like it? Because the writers for these shows, since they're really talented, want forward character momentum. They want their main characters figuring things out for themselves, learning, developing new parts of themselves, new traits, new strengths. That's what makes fun arcs to watch. But with the past lives, having all of that fixed for you doesn't really quite do the same thing. So they still have to make a journey to get there, which I kind of think makes the past lives a little bit unnecessary, since without them, we can still succeed overwhelmingly, as we see Korra do, but it puts more of the onus on the protagonists to actually deal with these issues, to figure things out for themselves, to develop and learn and grow even further as people, as they get no answers given to them. Everything is unknown, has to be learned by them. And it's not as if there's no one else to rely on for spiritual advice, or just advice in general. Korra as a show does an excellent job portraying that idea that wisdom can always be found around you, no matter what or who you've lost. There's no denying that the past lives being gone is a loss of a ton of knowledge, but it doesn't mean that knowledge can't be relearned from other sources in the future. The Avatars accumulated these skills from outside people, from their trainers, from people they met on the road, from traveling the world and visiting other cultures. And Korra can certainly find other mentors to help guide her through her Avatar journey, as she does with Tenzin, of course, who proves to be one of the wisest and most valuable sources for counsel that the Avatar has ever had. He is patient, naturally attuned to the balance of the world, and extremely dedicated to maintaining it. He is the perfect ally, and one who contains knowledge that Aang himself passed down to still be able to be relayed to Korra. It's not as if it's gone. Those avatars absorbed what they learned from the world itself, and that doesn't prevent the avatar from being able to do that and succeed in the future, even without all of that knowledge immediately accessible. Not to mention that she also goes to Zuko for advice, who, as Aang's perhaps closest friend, can provide exactly what he would likely say to her in any given situation, and helps her to make the selfless choice that Aang would have surely encouraged at the end of Book 3, when she sacrifices herself for the sake of the new airbending nation. Overall, I'd just keep in mind that while, yes, the past lives were a great source for wisdom and advice, it doesn't mean that they were the only source. Wisdom is not finite. There are so many places in the world to be able to look for it. So many people you can connect to. She can still speak to Iroh in the spirit world. There are hundreds, thousands even, of people out there who could teach her exactly what she needs, just as the past lives could. Another reason this loss is kind of important is because of the whole idea of the new age. People really like to disregard a ton of Book 2 of Korra and wish that it never happened, and simply dismiss a lot of it as messily written and not really coherent with the general themes that the two series were trying to establish. But it is likely the most important book in all of Avatar, not only because it reveals a ton of lore, but also because it has the largest effect on the role of the actual Avatar as a whole. The way this universe operates, every 10,000 years, a cataclysmic conflict between Rava and Vaatu will always happen. Will always change the course of the world going forward, depending on who triumphs at the end. It is a destined event that is simply how this universe operates and maintains itself, or at least this solar system. When the planets align, every time, the Earth is thrown into a completely new age, one that supersedes the one before it. We don't even have like any concept of what the world was like 10,000 years before Wan fused with Rava. All we know is that Rava and Vaatu were there, battling, intertwined. Maybe Vaatu won. He is the one who broke the divide between humans and spirits in the first place. So if Korra simply kept her past lives after all that happened during harmonic convergence and during the dawning of this new age for the universe, it kind of undermines that theme that the end of Book 2 really fought to bring forward with all of these bold decisions. Korra left the portals open, changing the course that Wan set for the last 10,000 year period, thus creating a new type of Avatar. One that does not flow from one world to another, but one who works in tandem with both the spirits and humanity. Not a bridge any longer, more of a peacekeeper, a facilitator between the two. This is a whole new being, and starting from the first life once again supports that claim, showing how fundamental this change is. Not just for the Avatar, but for the universe as a whole. Everything is being reset, no exceptions. The avatars of the old age have passed. The world and its protector have evolved and moved forward, not able to go back, not able to access the world that came before. To me, the choice to leave the past lives disconnected makes this resolution even stronger and more impactful. Taking that away would be a grave mistake. And this idea sort of links to the theme of change and its necessity. Even before Korra, both of these series focused heavily on the idea of change, the concept, the ability to cope with it, the process of accepting and moving forward afterwards. It was one of my favorite pieces of commentary from The Last Airbender, as change is evidently a part of all of our lives, something that we cannot remove, and it can be extremely difficult to accept it. Gyatso also was insistent on Aang's ability of being able to accept the impermanence of life, to be able to recognize that change is not only inevitable, it is necessary for the world to continue, to be truly balanced, to be able to keep going at all. After Aang finds out that his entire identity has been altered, that nobody looks at him the same since he's learned that he's the Avatar, Gyatso insists that he can't really focus on what was, only what is. There are some things in life that you just can't change, you can't reverse, and as much as you don't wish for them to happen, they still do. They're still going to, and there is never going to be any going back. Losing the past lives permanently represents this exact idea. Of course, it is upsetting. Of course, we all want them around forever. But it's more a matter of accepting how things ended up, rather than criticizing and hyperfixating on how they came to be, just as Korra needs to do. This happened. Unalaq ripped them out of her. No amount of you complaining or blaming others or Korra is going to change that. It's only a way for you to temporarily cope with this loss, and it will never fully satisfy you. In fact, Aang's wish to run away from this change led to some horrible consequences, showing how trying to put off this new alteration isn't really a feasible option. So many people got stuck on this loss, would have never recovered if they were in Korra's position, because they're right. Losing the past lives, utter tragedy. It's not Korra's fault, but it's a terrible thing that happened. And Korra, of course, mourns them as well. The primary difference is Korra has the strength to move forward, whereas all these people got stuck on this one loss forever. They're just not as strong as our girl. But The Last Airbender directly shows you, as I said before with Aang running away from the changes, that this only serves to cause you more pain in the long run. That running away is not a feasible option. That reverting it is just not possible. And Korra continues this idea really well, this exploration of change as a force that isn't necessarily positive or negative. It just kind of is. It has flaws. It has benefits. It can transform life for the better. It can perhaps make it worse, depending on your perspective, your point of view. Sometimes it helps a select few while making others feel confused or left behind. When Korra leaves the portals open and the world begins anew for the spirits, with vines springing out throughout Republic City, many are, of course, upset that the city that they knew is being upended. Some people's homes being invaded by plants and spirits and becoming unlivable. However, at the same time, airbenders begin to spring up all over the world, repopulating the nation that was lost, rebalancing the earth toward its natural state thanks to the new level of spiritual energy in the air. For Tenzin, this is the most beautiful development that ever could have happened, but those people who lost their homes to the vines are equally valid in being upset with Korra for the consequences of leaving the portals open. Jinora sees it as a positive. This is home for the spirits. Why would we want to ever clear these vines out? But the person who used to sleep underneath that tree you're sitting on might disagree. But eventually, those same wilds become a fixture of the city itself. The architecture is rebuilt around these new installations of nature and spirituality, allowing for natural, peaceful life to return to humans in Republic City, while preserving the new habitats for spirits at the same time. And those wilds that people hated are a source of tourism, a world wonder that is incredibly beautiful to many who visit, despite all the protests that occurred when they first appeared, and they probably were great for Republic City's economy. There's so many excellent depictions of change in this series, along with the struggle to accept it. Another quick storyline I'd like to mention is Tenzin training the new Air Nation. Even he, with this extremely positive development, had to accept that the Air Nation has still been irrevocably altered for the rest of eternity by Sozin and his successors. The new Air Nation are not monks. They are not used to his entirely different lifestyle, and they don't necessarily want to modify their entire philosophy. And that is simply something Tenzin must accept if he wants a new Air Nation at all. They can still represent the values that the old Air Nation always sought to uphold, but they must approach it in a more modern way if they want to be able to succeed. I'd also add that this positive movement and sort of natural shift as a result of a seemingly tragic change really additionally validates Vatu's existence, his fight for chaos to upend the social norm. Vatu must exist. He is not evil, as many insinuate. He is a force of nature. There's a huge reason why the series insists that he cannot be destroyed under any circumstances. I know many people find fault with Rava and Vatu as a sort of yin and yang, ebb and flow, saying that the series kind of favors Rava as good, which is not what it was trying to say. And sure, I totally understand why you'd see that, but ultimately, the series favors Rava because Rava favors humanity. And also, we are humans watching this show. Order is, of course, more beneficial to human lives, so that is what we are going to root for in a show that we watch. But in general, the universe is balanced with chaos as well. While yeah, chaos may be terrible for humanity, sometimes it has unseen positive effects on the world overall. This is indicative of a view of why life is so precious, why it has value to us, because it has the possibility of changing, of ending. There is no happiness without sadness. There is no pleasure without displeasure. There is no order without chaos. And I feel that this show actually did a fantastic job of conveying that to the audience, portraying that change is necessary, that even people like Zahir or Unalaq are necessary, even if they are villains. Of course, it's not ever required for people to have to go through extreme trauma, right, to learn their lesson like Korra endured, but the show certainly suggests that those with opposing strong ideals like Zahir and Unalaq and those members of the Red Lotus are crucial to uphold the balance of the world, to provide differing opinions, and to shed light on injustice that those who try to uphold order perhaps look past, like the Earth Queen, for example, or the fact that the portals were kept closed. That was simply the status quo. We never questioned it. We didn't even know why they were closed, and we just accepted it. But Unalaq, and only Unalaq, forced Korra to really examine this decision in the past, to force Rava even to look back on everything that they've done and see the mistakes that they've made leading up to this conflict now. And it's due to that Korra decides to actually leave the portals open, resulting in this monumental positive change of the Air Nation coming back. Just as Zahir forced Korra to endure a more intense emotional journey than she ever has before, resulting in the most mature version of Korra than we've ever seen. It's not good that she suffered, of course, but there are certainly positives and negatives. There's different ways of looking at these changes that are not just from the perspective of, oh, Rava is good and Vatu is bad, or Zahir is bad. So while the loss of the past lives is an utter tragedy, a really heartbreaking moment in the series, The Last Airbender and Korra both work to teach us that we can find new ways to look at this change and appreciate it, to realize how it might help Korra as a person in Avatar, how we can still move forward with strength, and how we can accept what has happened to the past lives, and at the end of the day, move forward with the new cycle and come up with exciting ideas about what it means for the future, rather than fixating on one thing from the past. Another thing that I think the past lives really helps in this series is Korra's development. Honestly, I do believe that the removal of them forces Korra to be more reliant on what she's learned and experienced. It allows her to make more mistakes, to learn more from them, and thus to become a more well-rounded and knowledgeable person, as she learns from experience, rather than just word of mouth. Korra really, like Aang ended up doing at the end of his series, has to decide for herself what is best, without any sort of influence from past avatars or those who have walked in her shoes before. She has people to give her advice in reality, of course, but she does not have anyone who has actually been in her position to talk to. She's facing everything completely on her own, willingly walking into the unknown. It's a much more human way to go about life, and one that I think makes Korra more attuned with her own humanity as she realizes this very different role for herself in the world, which was an extremely necessary step forward for her overall arc, as she put a lot of pride in being the Avatar more than human. So her being able to recognize and face everything like those people that she protects allows her to protect them more efficiently, to sympathize with them, and be more patient. From then on, her accomplishments and ability to continually triumph highlights her own personal strengths, differentiating herself from the other avatars, and showing how uniquely she is able to handle and deal with all of the world's issues. How her own personal compassion and ability to empathize and prioritize lives other than her own allows her to accomplish this role with grace and immense amounts of positive change. And the last thing I'd like to address in this video is the fact that many people assume Korra's avatar state is weaker. This is a common criticism of Korra losing the past lives. Many insinuate that she permanently made the avatar state, and thereby the avatar, weaker. However, I don't think people really consider what Korra's avatar state post-Book 2 really represents, what it constitutes, as well as what Wan's fusion of Rava and sealing of Vaatu really did to the avatar's power. Rava is now at her full capacity, her full size, thanks to Korra's complete defeat of Vaatu at harmonic convergence. Though he will, of course, regrow inside of Rava, at the moment, she is at her most powerful. Thus, Korra is actually one of the strongest avatars we've ever seen when entering the avatar state, after Book 2. That is. Even stronger than Wan, and dare I say, even stronger than Aang. For all this time, Vaatu has been locked away in the Tree of Time, stagnant, retaining the energy that he had already gained leading up to that harmonic convergence we saw 10,000 years ago. He wasn't small. He had a decent amount of power left in him, balancing Rava out. Wan was able to tip the scales, as they said. Now, Vaatu needs time to rebuild his power. Right now, he is nothing more than a speck, so Rava is able to assume more space and energy than she ever has before. The less darkness that there is, the more light is able to shine, and the more Korra is able to move humanity and the spirits forward. While the previous avatars could hone skills of their past lives in the avatar state, they were still always lacking the power locked away in the Tree of Time, the amount of spiritual energy that Korra herself is able to unlock, and then amplifies also by leaving the portals open, which we know increases the spiritual energy in the physical world as well, thus making Rava and the avatar state more powerful there. Overall, the decision to sever the past lives doesn't get nearly enough credit for how much it contributes to both shows' overall themes and the main idea of the Avatar in general. Many fans still wish for them to be restored in the new series, for the connection to come back, but I urge people to understand that this would only be detrimental to the Avatar universe as a whole, and would undermine so many wonderful messages that they have already conveyed extremely well. But let me know if you disagreed or agreed with me in the comments below. I thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here at all. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to support me further, you can go to patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's PosiTVty. There you get all these videos before they come out on YouTube. You get all of the unedited essays, so you can hear all of my mistakes and things that I feel maybe I probably shouldn't put on YouTube. And you also get to choose exactly what you want to see on the channel. This video was entirely requested by a patron, and I credit him pretty much completely with this idea, as a lot of the logic and the lore was his guidance. So thank you so much, Isak Torberg, because I really appreciate all of the suggestions that you give me on The Legend of Korra. But if you want to be like him and give me suggestions, tell me things that I perhaps hadn't considered before, go to that Patreon and you can do that right away. But anyway, I'll see you for the next time, and goodbye.